This was the handshake the world had been waiting for. So much hinged on the bilateral meeting of the two presidents that you could almost hear a sigh of relief going through world markets when Donald Trump said this.
We had a great meeting, and we will be continuing to negotiate. And I promise that for at least the time being, we're not going to be lifting tariffs on China.
The focus here, of course, being on the wording for at least the time being.
$350 billion.
At last year's G20 summit, Donald Trump said something very similar, but that didn't keep U.S.-Chinese relations from deteriorating afterwards. The EU had much more solid results to share with the world. After 20 years of negotiating, finally an agreement with the South American trade bloc, Mercosur.
This deal is a real message in support of open, fair, sustainable and rules-based trade, because trade creates good jobs for all concerned. It shows that in these turbulent moments, agreements can be reached, mutually beneficial compromises can be found.
But it's getting harder. The negotiations to reach agreement on the final communiqué were tougher than ever before and lasted through 2 nights straight. Besides trade, there was another contentious topic. Climate change. The United States wanted to kick the topic out of the communiqué altogether. But in the end, there was just too much opposition. In the end, 19 countries supported the Paris Agreement that's supposed to limit global warming to under 2 degrees, and 1 country didn't. In these times, this qualifies as success.
After negotiating day and night, it's now possible to have a 19+1 statement, in which the 19 signatories of the Paris Agreement commit themselves to the same things we did in Buenos Aires. We say this process is irreversible.
So overall, the worst outcome was averted. But this can't hide the fact that each year the G20 is under increasing pressure.
Under increasing pressure, but can the G20 forum still make a difference? Max Hoffman put the question to Naoyuki Yoshino. He's the dean of the Asian Development Bank Institute, a Tokyo-based think tank.
Professor Yoshino, it seems so hard nowadays to get a compromise at the G20. Is this institution becoming obsolete?
I think G20 are looking for the world globe representatives and looking for the solutions for entire globe. So right after Lehman shock, everybody looking for the same direction. But now each country has their own interest. One country is exporting more, and the success of G20 in Osaka is coming from Prime Minister Abe was focusing much more on consensus agreement issues rather than bilateral issue.
But why do you qualify this as a success? They didn't decide anything new. They're just guarding the status quo.
No, I don't think so. They are looking at the sustainable development goals, and waste plastic should be mitigated, and furthermore, female participation into education, labor market, and digital information, and so on. There are lots of progress we can discuss, not only this year, but also in future.
But if you look at the difficulties they had to decide something on fighting climate change, this is not a good direction. You would agree with that, no?
I think it is very important for the international disclosure of various data. For example, how much CO2 has been emissioned in each country. Then people realize, even though leaders maybe want to conceal their exogenous. So I think the international organization and comparison of various data, that would be very important, and it can be disclosed.
But you agree that on climate change, it is not a good sign that, for example, the United States do not support the Paris Agreement?
Yes, if the United States will not support, but if people realize how much CO2 they are exposing to the world, then that will convince even the small children, oh, we are exporting too much. So that is a very important message to the people. That's why I'm talking about disclosure of data, and also comparison with other countries are very important.
Thank you very much, Professor Yoshino.